Welcome, dear listeners, to another chilling journey into the shadows, where whispers of the past refuse to die. Tonight, we set our lanterns aglow and walk through one of America's most mysterious states, South Carolina. A land where history clings to the moss-draped oaks, where battlefields still echo with phantom cries, and where the spirits of the restless linger in forgotten mansions, graveyards, and desolate roads. South Carolina isn't just known for its beauty, its coastline, or its role in America's history. It's also home to some of the most haunted places in the entire South. Beneath its charm lies a spine-tingling collection of ghost stories, legends that seep through the cracks of old plantations, prisons, inns, and graveyards. Tonight, I'll take you through 10 of the most haunted places in South Carolina, locations where visitors have seen apparitions, heard unexplainable sounds, and even felt icy hands tug at them in the dark. From the terrifying corridors of abandoned asylums to plantations haunted by spirits of tragedy. These are places where the line between the living and the dead is razor thin. So, light your candles, lock your doors, and settle into the safety of the dark. Because once we begin this journey, you may find yourself questioning whether shadows outside your window are just shadows, or something else entirely. Now, let's descend together into the top 10 most haunted places in South Carolina. The Battery Carriage House in Charleston, South Carolina, may look like a picture-perfect example of Southern charm, tucked into the city's historic district. Its grand facade and sweeping views of the waterfront invite travelers to step into a world of elegance and old-world beauty. But for those who know the stories whispered in hushed tones by locals and former guests, the inn is not just a place to rest your head. It is one of Charleston's most haunted locations, a house where history clings tightly, and where the spirits of the restless make their presence known. Visitors often arrive enchanted by the inn's beauty, with ivy trailing along the walls, wide verandas overlooking the street, and antique furnishings that speak to a bygone era. It promises romance and comfort. Yet when the sun goes down and the gas lamps flicker outside, the Battery Carriage House reveals another side, one steeped in the eerie and unexplained. It is here, behind its graceful facade, that guests have come face to face with something out of a nightmare. Perhaps the most chilling of these encounters is with the spirit known simply as the Headless Torso. For decades, visitors have told nearly identical stories. They return to their rooms after a night out in Charleston, prepare for bed, and just as they settle into the quiet of the evening, they feel the unmistakable sensation of not being alone. Then, as if stepping straight out of the air itself, a figure materializes. At first, it looks like a man, broad-shouldered, wearing clothing that seems oddly out of place in modern times. But when the eye travels upward, horror sets in. Where a face should be, there is nothing. What remains is a decapitated phantom, hovering silently, translucent and glowing faintly in the darkness. Many believe the Headless Torso is the ghost of a soldier executed during the Civil War. Some historians speculate he may have been a deserter, beheaded for his crimes, his spirit condemned to wander the inn that stands on land once touched by the violence of war. Others say he may be the victim of a duel, a grim reminder of Charleston's bloody past when disputes were settled at dawn with pistols or swords. Whatever his origin, the Headless Torso has terrified more than one guest into packing their bags and checking out before dawn. But not all of the Battery Carriage House inn spirits inspire fear. Another frequently reported ghost is known as the Gentleman Ghost. Unlike the headless apparition, this figure is described as calm, almost protective, as if watching over those who spend the night. Guests often awaken to find him sitting at the foot of their bed or standing quietly near the window. Dressed in old-fashioned attire, his presence strangely comforting rather than frightening. Some believe he may be a former resident of the home, a wealthy Charlestonian, unwilling to part with the place he loved in life. One guest described waking in the middle of the night to see the Gentleman Ghost sitting in a chair, his face illuminated by moonlight streaming through the window. He did not move, nor did he vanish right away. Instead, he simply sat, observing, until the guest blinked in, then he was gone. The encounter was not accompanied by fear, but rather by a deep sense of melancholy. As though the spirit were lonely, seeking company in the silent hours before dawn. While these two apparitions are the most famous, they are far from the only strange phenomena experienced at the inn. Doors open and close when no one is near them. Footsteps echo down the hallways late at night, though the building is quiet and still. Guests report cold spots in their rooms, as if a patch of air has been pulled straight from a winter's night. Some even say they hear whispers, faint and indistinct, that seem to come from just beyond the walls. Staff members, too, have their stories. Housekeepers speak of beds that look freshly made, moments after being turned down. Others refuse to linger in certain rooms for too long, citing a heavy, oppressive energy that seems to press in on them. Tour guides who share Charleston's haunted history often include the inn in their tales, reminding listeners that the city's beauty and its darkness are forever intertwined. Charleston itself is a city layered with ghosts. From pirate executions at White Point Garden to the haunted halls of the old Charleston jail, spirits seem woven into the very fabric of its history. The Battery Carriage House Inn stands as one of the crown jewels of this haunted legacy, its elegant exterior hiding the restless souls within. Unlike some ghost stories that fade with time, the reports here only continue to grow, passed from guest to guest like a whispered warning. Do not be surprised if you are not alone. For those who stay at the inn, the experience can be unforgettable. Some come hoping to encounter a ghost, armed with cameras and recorders. Others book a room simply for the charm, never expecting the supernatural, only to leave with a story that chills them for years to come. A night at the Battery Carriage House Inn is a step into Charleston's haunted heart, where history, tragedy, and the spirit world converge under one roof. And so, the inn remains a paradox of beauty and fear. By day, it is a welcoming retreat with the grace of old Charleston. By night, it transforms into something else entirely, a place where shadows move on their own, where headless soldiers roam the rooms, and where lonely gentlemen keep silent watch over sleeping guests. For those who dare spend the night, the Battery Carriage House Inn offers more than just Southern hospitality. It offers a brush with the unknown, a chance to step across the thin line between the living and the dead. The old Charleston jail rises like a brooding giant against the Charleston skyline, its weathered stone walls and looming towers a reminder of the city's darkest history. For more than a century, from 1802 until 1939, this fortress-like building held some of the most dangerous figures the city had ever known: pirates, thieves, murderers, and even prisoners of war during the Civil War. Thousands of souls passed through its iron gates, and not all of them left peacefully. Today, the jail stands abandoned, yet alive in another sense. Its corridors echo with whispers. Shadows move without form, and visitors speak of icy fingers brushing against them in the dark. Perhaps the most infamous ghost tied to the old Charleston jail is Lavinia Fisher, a woman whose name has become etched in legend as America's first female serial killer. Lavinia and her husband John ran an inn just outside Charleston in the early 1800s. According to lore, unsuspecting travelers who stayed there were offered a special cup of tea laced with poison. While historians debate the truth of these accounts, what is certain is that the Fishers were convicted of highway robbery and sentenced to hang in 1820. The story of Lavinia's execution has become as chilling as her supposed crimes. On the day she was led to the gallows, witnesses said she was defiant, refusing to go quietly. Dressed in her wedding gown, she is said to have shouted to the crowd, "If you have a message for the devil, tell me now, for I shall see him shortly." With that, the trapdoor opened, and her body fell. Yet many believe her spirit never left. Instead, it returned to the place where she spent her final days, the old Charleston jail. To this day, visitors report hearing her presence. Tour guides tell of sudden, piercing screams echoing down the hallways when no one else is inside. Paranormal investigators claim to have recorded her voice on EVP, a woman's whisper repeating words like "get out" or "help me." Some people say they feel sharp tugs at their clothing, as if unseen hands are trying to pull them back into the cells. One guest even swore she felt a hand grip her wrist tightly, leaving behind a bruise that no living person had caused. But Lavinia is not the only restless soul within those walls. The jail housed hundreds of Civil War prisoners under harsh and often deadly conditions. Many died of disease, starvation, or abuse. Their spirits, it is said, linger in the form of shadowy figures drifting across the halls, or sudden bursts of cold air in rooms where no windows are open. Investigators describe feeling overwhelming waves of sadness, anger, or dread, as though the emotions of the prisoners have seeped into the very stones. Others speak of a hulking dark mass that appears in the stairwells, a shape without form that seems to grow as it approaches. Some believe this is not a single spirit, but rather the collective energy of all the suffering that once took place inside. Visitors often describe the sensation of being watched, a pressure in the chest, or a sudden dizziness that forces them to leave the building. The physical structure of the old Charleston jail only adds to its haunted reputation. The crumbling stone walls, narrow staircases, and rusted iron bars seem to close in on you as you walk. Even in daylight, shadows linger stubbornly, pooling in corners as though something is hiding there. At night, the building transforms completely. The silence is heavy, broken only by the occasional creak of wood or the echo of footsteps that sometimes guarantee belong to anyone living. Paranormal groups who have dared to investigate the jail report terrifying encounters. Cameras have captured misty figures moving across empty rooms. Recorders have picked up voices responding directly to questions, sometimes angrily, sometimes pleading. Flashlights have flickered in response to commands, and motion sensors have triggered when no one was near. Even seasoned investigators admit the jail carries a darker energy than most places, as though the boundary between this world and the next is especially thin here. For locals and tourists alike, the old Charleston jail has become a centerpiece of Charleston's haunted history. Ghost tours bring groups through its corridors, recounting the bloody stories of executions, duels, and criminal trials that marked its past. Many of these visitors leave shaken, claiming they experienced something they cannot explain. One guest reported seeing a woman in a long white dress standing silently in a cell, only for her to vanish when he blinked. Another swore he heard the rattling of chains dragging along the floor, though the building was empty. The sheer volume of reports has made the jail one of the most famous haunted locations in the South. Yet, despite its reputation, people continue to be drawn to it, perhaps out of curiosity, perhaps out of a hidden desire to brush against the supernatural. The old Charleston jail is more than just a decaying building. It is a monument to the darkest parts of human history, where cruelty and despair left scars that time cannot erase. And it is in those scars that the spirits remain. Lavinia Fisher's screams still rattle the air. Civil War soldiers pace the halls in eternal unrest. The weight of centuries of suffering presses down on all who enter. The old Charleston jail may be silent now, its cells empty, its bars rusting, but its ghosts tell a different story. For those who dare to listen, they are still very much alive. Magnolia Plantation and Gardens is often celebrated as one of the most beautiful places in Charleston, South Carolina. Its sweeping gardens, centuries-old oaks draped in Spanish moss, and tranquil waters attract thousands of visitors every year. Yet behind its postcard-perfect charm lies a much darker history. Founded in the late 1600s, Magnolia is one of the oldest plantations in the South, a place where generations of enslaved men, women, and children endured unimaginable hardship. Many of them lived and died on this land, and their suffering seems to echo still. For countless visitors, Magnolia is not only a site of beauty, but also one of the most haunted places in the state. The plantation itself was originally established by the Drayton family, who maintained it for centuries. While its gardens became world famous, the foundation of that grandeur was built on the backs of enslaved laborers. Their lives were filled with toil and pain, and many never left the property, even after death. Because of this, Magnolia Plantation has long been considered a hotbed of paranormal activity, where the past refuses to stay buried. Visitors walking the winding paths of the gardens often speak of shadowy figures moving among the trees. At first, these shapes may be mistaken for another tourist in the distance, but when approached, the figures vanish into thin air. Some believe these are the restless spirits of enslaved workers, forever bound to the land they tended in life. Paranormal investigators have reported seeing dark silhouettes that dart quickly between hedges or linger at the edges of the rice fields. Strange lights are another phenomenon often reported here. Small glowing orbs flicker in the trees at night, drifting slowly before disappearing. Some believe these orbs are spirits trying to manifest, while others say they may be tied to the tragic deaths that took place on the plantation grounds. Whatever the cause, witnesses are often left unsettled, describing the lights as having an otherworldly quality, brighter and stranger than fireflies could ever be. The slave cabins at Magnolia Plantation carry perhaps the heaviest energy of all. These simple, weathered structures once held families who lived in conditions of unimaginable suffering. Today, visitors entering the cabins report hearing faint but chilling sound chains clinking softly as if dragged across the floor, or footsteps pacing when no one is inside. Some people even claim to hear whispers in the silence, voices speaking too low to understand, but clearly not belonging to the living. Animals, too, seem to sense what humans cannot. Dogs brought onto the property often bark or whimper at seemingly empty spaces, refusing to move forward. Horses have been known to shy away from certain parts of the grounds, eyes wide with fear. Many believe animals are more attuned to the presence of spirits, reacting instinctively to energies humans may overlook. One of the most frequently told stories involves visitors feeling sudden waves of sorrow or heaviness while walking through the gardens. Tour guides describe guests who have broken down in tears without explanation, overcome by emotions that don't seem to be their own. Paranormal experts suggest that the intense grief and suffering experienced on the plantation may have imprinted itself on the land, leaving behind a residual energy that affects those sensitive enough to feel it. There are also accounts of full-bodied apparitions. Some visitors claim to have seen women in period clothing strolling among the flowers, their faces distant and expressionless. Others have seen men working in the fields only for the figures to dissolve into the air before their eyes. A particularly chilling story involves a tourist who stopped to rest on a bench near the gardens. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw a man standing only a few feet away. When she turned her head fully to greet him, there was no one there, though the sound of rustling leaves lingered, as if someone had just walked past. The plantation house itself also carries whispers of ghostly activity. Guests on tours sometimes feel a cold presence brush against them while moving through the halls. Some hear faint knocks or doors shutting upstairs when the house is supposed to be empty. A few have even reported seeing faces peering from windows when no one should be inside. Magnolia's haunted reputation is not surprising given its long, tragic history. For centuries, lives were lost here through disease, violence, and the cruelty of enslavement. Those stories, too painful to fully recount, seem to have left echoes behind. Paranormal investigators often remark that Magnolia feels less like a single haunting and more like a tapestry of spirits, woven into every tree, stone, and building on the property. Yet there is also a strange duality to Magnolia Plantation and Gardens. By day, it remains a place of extraordinary natural beauty, drawing tourists from around the world to admire its flowers and sweeping landscapes. But for those who look closer, who listen carefully to the whispers of the past, the darker side of Magnolia reveals itself. Beneath the beauty lies sorrow, and within the silence, the voices of the dead. The haunted legends of Magnolia Plantation remind us that history is not something locked away in books or museums. It lingers, breathing in the places where tragedy unfolded, waiting for those who are willing to see beyond the surface. Magnolia is a place where the past walks alongside the present, and where every step may bring you closer to a shadow that doesn't belong to this world. For those who visit, the plantation offers more than a glimpse of southern beauty. It offers a chilling encounter with history's ghosts, the restless spirits of those who once lived, worked, and died on its grounds. And as the sun sets and the gardens fall into shadow, the question remains, are you truly walking alone at Magnolia Plantation? Or are the spirits of the past still there, watching silently from the trees. The Dock Street Theater in Charleston is one of those places where beauty, history, and tragedy collide. Built in the early 1730s, it was the first building in America constructed specifically for theatrical performances. Its grand stage and ornate balconies have seen countless plays, musicals, and operas. But along with the laughter and applause, the theater has carried something darker through the centuries. Visitors, actors, and staff often whisper about the lingering presence of souls who never left the stage, bound to the old brick and wood as though the curtain never truly fell on their lives. Among the most talked about spirits is Nettie Dickerson. Nettie was a woman of unfortunate circumstance, a prostitute in Charleston during the 19th century. She wanted more than the life she had been given. She longed for beauty, elegance, and attention, but instead found herself judged, shamed, and scorned. Legend says Nettie died a dramatic and violent death. As she leaned against the railing of the theater during a storm, lightning struck the building and killed her instantly. From that night on, the Dock Street Theater was said to be her eternal stage. Witnesses often describe her ghostly figure as unmistakable. She appears in a glowing red dress, standing in the balconies or sitting quietly in the back rows. Her face, though beautiful, carries an intensity that unsettles even the bravest theatergoers. Her eyes are said to burn with jealousy and bitterness, as though she still resents the world that denied her the life she so desperately wanted. Some actors preparing backstage have caught sight of her in the mirrors, her red gown sweeping across the reflection. Though the room itself is empty, the theater's eerie reputation doesn't end with Nettie. Another spirit often associated with the Dock Street Theater is John Wilkes Booth, the infamous assassin of President Abraham Lincoln. While there's no evidence Booth ever performed there, many claim to have seen a figure resembling him lingering near the stage, pacing as though rehearsing lines for an audience long gone. Whether this is truly Booth's restless ghost or simply a trick of imagination, the stories refuse to die. But the energy within the Dock Street Theater is not always sinister. Some say the atmosphere feels charged rather than frightening, as though the building itself is alive with memories. During rehearsals, actors have heard disembodied applause echoing through the auditorium, though no audience sits in the seats. Others have felt sudden cold drafts sweep across the stage, followed by the faint smell of smoke or perfume, scents that should have no place in an empty hall. The creaking of the floorboards, the dim flicker of stage lights, and the hushed whispers in the shadows add to the chilling atmosphere. Tour guides who bring groups through the theater late at night often note that equipment malfunctions, microphones cut out, cameras refuse to work, and recordings mysteriously vanish. Some claim this is the spirit's way of keeping their secrets safe, as though they resent outsiders trying to capture them on film. Locals say Nettie's presence is strongest on stormy nights, as if the crack of thunder and flash of lightning call her back to the moment of her death. Guests who sit alone in the balconies have reported the feeling of being watched, their shoulders heavy under the weight of unseen eyes. A few brave souls even swear they felt a hand on their arm or a tug at their clothing, only to find no one standing beside them. The Dock Street Theater is more than just a place for performances. It is a reminder that some stories never end. Its walls carry laughter, tragedy, music, and screams, all layered together in a haunting harmony that makes the building unlike any other. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, stepping inside feels like walking into another world, a place where time stands still and the past breathes just over your shoulder. For Charleston, the Dock Street Theater is a treasure, not only for its cultural significance, but for the mystery it holds. Every performance takes place under the gaze of an audience, both living and dead. Some people come to the theater for the shows, while others come hoping to catch a glimpse of Nettie in her red dress, silently haunting the balcony where she once stood in life and continues to linger in death. The South Carolina State Hospital, once known as the South Carolina Lunatic Asylum, is a place where history and horror intertwine. Built in the early 1800s, it was among the first asylums in the United States, originally conceived as a progressive step toward mental health treatment. But as the years went on, the The promise of compassion was replaced with overcrowding, neglect, and brutality. Behind its walls, thousands of patients endured conditions that would be unimaginable today. Those who were meant to find refuge here often found only torment, and many never left the sprawling grounds alive. Today, the abandoned hospital has become one of the most notorious haunted sites in the South, where echoes of the past still seem to cry out from the shadows. At its peak, the hospital was intended to symbolize hope, built with wide corridors and high windows to provide fresh air and light. However, the noble design could not withstand the grim reality of an ever-growing patient population. By the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the asylum had become severely overcrowded, housing thousands in conditions more akin to a prison than a hospital. Stories of abuse, maltreatment, and inhumane experiments began to circulate. Electroshock therapy and lobotomies were common, with little regard for their devastating impact on patients' lives. Many died under these circumstances, their bodies buried in unmarked graves across the property. With such an accumulation of suffering, it is no surprise that many believe the spirits of former patients still roam the hospital. Paranormal investigators and thrill-seekers who visit the grounds often describe unsettling experiences. Shadows move quickly across hallways, even when no one else is present. Some visitors report sudden drops in temperature, followed by the unmistakable feeling of being watched. The sounds of distant footsteps echo in the silence, as though someone unseen is pacing the wards. At times, faint screams or moans carry through the night air, chilling those who hear them to the core. Disembodied voices are one of the most common phenomena reported. Investigators using recording devices have captured chilling whispers and cries that seem to come from nowhere. In some cases, these voices even respond to questions, as though the restless spirits are desperate to communicate. One team claimed to hear a woman's voice pleading, "Help me," over and over again. Another captured a male voice that angrily shouted, "Leave," when asked if anyone was present. These accounts suggest that the souls of those who suffered here may not have found peace. Apparitions are also frequently reported. Visitors describe seeing figures in old hospital gowns slowly moving through the halls. These spectral patients often vanish when approached, dissolving into thin air before startled witnesses. Others claim to have seen faces peering out from broken windows, their hollow eyes fixed on those outside, even during the day. The eerie silence of the hospital is broken by the occasional sight of someone who shouldn't be there, a fleeting shadow, a figure around a corner that disappears the moment it is pursued. Perhaps most unsettling are the reports from those who claim physical contact with unseen forces. People have felt sudden tugs on their clothing, icy touches on their arms, or the sensation of hands pressing down on their shoulders. Some have even left the hospital with unexplained scratches or bruises, as though something was trying to mark them. Dogs brought to the grounds often refuse to enter, growling or cowering at the threshold, reacting to something their owners cannot see. The hospital grounds themselves hold a heavy energy. The decaying buildings stand as hollow shells of what once was, their peeling paint and collapsing ceilings a stark reminder of the suffering within. Trees have overtaken parts of the property, their twisted roots breaking through concrete pathways as nature reclaims the land. Yet, even in this state of ruin, the atmosphere feels charged, as though the emotions of the past are imprinted in the very soil. Local legends add to the mystery. Some say that on certain nights, the cries of patients can still be heard across the fields, drifting on the wind. Others tell of a spectral nurse who roams the wards, pushing an invisible cart, checking on patients who no longer exist. There are even stories of former doctors and staff members appearing, perhaps tied to the hospital by guilt or duty that transcends death. For the city of Columbia, the South Carolina State Hospital is both a landmark and a reminder. Its history is intertwined with the story of mental health care in America, one that began with hope but became overshadowed by neglect and cruelty. While efforts have been made in recent years to preserve parts of the property, much of it remains abandoned, locked away from the public, a monument to lives lost and pain endured. Yet despite the warnings, people continue to be drawn to the site. Paranormal investigators, historians, and curious locals seek out the asylum, hoping to catch a glimpse of something extraordinary. For many, it is not just about ghost stories, but about honoring those who suffered, ensuring their voices are not forgotten. Every whisper, every shadow, every unexplained sound serves as a chilling reminder of the real lives that passed through those halls. The South Carolina State Hospital remains one of the most haunted locations in the region, a place where the veil between past and present seems dangerously thin. Whether one believes in spirits or not, stepping onto the grounds brings an undeniable sense of unease. It is as though the walls themselves hold memories too heavy to fade. In the silence, the echoes of the past linger, ensuring that the suffering endured there will never be entirely forgotten. Poogan's Porch in Charleston, South Carolina, is known today as one of the city's most beloved restaurants. But behind the charm of its Victorian architecture and comforting Southern cuisine lies a reputation that's far more mysterious. For decades, guests and staff alike have claimed encounters with spirits who never truly left the old home, weaving it into one of Charleston's most famous haunted landmarks. The story begins in the late 1800s, when the building that now houses Poogan's Porch was constructed as a private residence. It was a grand Victorian-style home, one of many in the historic district, where families lived, neighbors gathered, and the heartbeat of Charleston pulsed through quiet, tree-lined streets. For many years, it was simply an elegant home, but its transformation into a restaurant in the 1970s gave it new life. Yet, as diners came to enjoy fried chicken, biscuits, and shrimp and grits, strange and unsettling things began to happen, things that couldn't be explained away by coincidence. The most famous spirit said to haunt Poogan's Porch is Zoe St. Amon. Zoe lived in the home with her sister, Elizabeth, during the early 20th century. She worked as a school teacher, a strict but intelligent woman who never married. As time went on, Zoe grew increasingly reclusive, retreating into the house and rarely being seen by neighbors. After Elizabeth's death, Zoe was left alone in the house, and it is said that she lived the rest of her days in profound loneliness. When she passed away, the house became quiet, but her spirit, according to legend, never moved on. Since the restaurant opened, countless reports of Zoe's presence have surfaced. Diners and staff describe seeing a woman dressed in a long black dress, her hair neatly pinned, wandering the dining rooms or gazing pensively from the upstairs windows. Sometimes she appears clearly, startling guests with how lifelike she looks, only to vanish moments later. At other times, her presence is felt through cold drafts, soft footsteps, or the sensation of being watched. Many believe that Zoe's heartbreak and isolation tethered her to the home she once loved and refused to leave. One of the eeriest and most well-documented sightings comes from restaurant employees closing up late at night. More than one staff member has sworn they saw Zoe peering out of the upstairs window as they locked the doors, her expression distant and sorrowful. Guests walking along the street outside have reported the same thing, catching a glimpse of a woman staring down at them, only to learn later that the upstairs rooms were empty. But Zoe isn't the only ghost who lingers at Poogan's Porch. Some say her sister, Elizabeth, has also been felt within the home. While Zoe's energy is described as melancholy, Elizabeth's is said to be calmer, almost protective. Diners have reported hearing two female voices whispering when no one else was around, leading many to believe that both sisters remain connected to the home, their bond unbroken even in death. Adding to the restaurant's unique lore is the story of Poogan himself, the dog for whom the restaurant is named. Poogan was a scruffy, friendly pup who lived in the neighborhood and spent much of his time on the porch of the house, watching over the street and greeting passersby. When the restaurant opened, the owners named it in his honor, and though Poogan passed away years ago, patrons say his spirit still visits. Diners often feel the sensation of a dog brushing against their legs while eating, or hear the sound of nails clicking on the wooden floors, only to look down and see nothing. Some guests even report hearing faint barking late at night. Unlike the more sorrowful presence of Zoe, Poogan's ghost is said to bring comfort, as though the loyal dog continues to keep watch over the place that bears his name. The combination of Zoe's tragic story, her sister's lingering presence, and the friendly spirit of Poogan. The dog has made Poogan's porch a favorite spot, not only for food lovers, but also for ghost hunters and paranormal enthusiasts. Tour guides in Charleston often include the restaurant in their ghost walks, sharing chilling tales of diners who swore they saw Zoe's shadow flit across the room or felt a cold hand brush against their shoulder. Paranormal investigators who visited the site claim to have captured unexplained photographs, strange orbs, and even audio recordings of voices that couldn't be traced to anyone in the room. Perhaps what makes the hauntings at Poogan's porch so compelling is how ordinary the encounters feel. People don't describe dramatic poltergeist activity or terrifying apparitions. Instead, they speak of fleeting glimpses, subtle sensations, and an atmosphere that suggests unseen company. The ghosts of Poogan's porch Dante seem malevolent, but rather tied to the home by emotion and memory. Zoe, who couldn't let go of the life she lost. Elizabeth, who may still watch over her sister. And Poogan, the loyal dog, whose love for the porch outlasted his life. White Point Garden in Charleston, South Carolina, is today known as a peaceful, picturesque park lined with grand oak trees, winding pathways, and benches overlooking the harbor. By day, it is a place of charm, often filled with families strolling, tourists snapping photos, and locals finding a moment of rest. Yet, when night falls, the garden transforms. The air seems to shift, and an unsettling heaviness settles over the grounds. This is because beneath its beauty lies a history steeped in blood, death, and lingering spirits that refuse to leave. Back in the 1700s, White Point was not the tranquil space it is now. It was the stage for a grim spectacle: public executions. Pirates captured along the South Carolina coast were brought here to meet their end. They were hanged in full view of the townspeople, their bodies displayed as a warning to others who dared to challenge the law. Some were even left dangling in the salty air for days, a gruesome reminder of the cost of rebellion. That kind of suffering and violence has a way of etching itself into a place, and many believe it left a permanent spiritual stain on White Point Garden. Visitors often describe strange sensations while walking through the park at night. The most common is the feeling of being watched, as though unseen eyes are fixed on them from the shadows. Sometimes it's accompanied by the unmistakable sound of footsteps echoing across the pathways, though no one else is near. Some claim they've even smelled the strong scent of salt water in the air, even on still evenings when the sea breeze is absent. The most frequent apparitions reported are those of the pirates themselves. Shadowy figures in ragged clothing are said to wander near the old cannons that still line the garden. Relics of Charleston's defensive past, witnesses often describe them as men in sailors' garb, faces obscured, sometimes glowing faintly before vanishing into thin air. They appear most often where the executions were said to have taken place, their presence a chilling reminder of their violent deaths. Some visitors have reported seeing full-bodied apparitions of men with ropes around their necks, swaying slightly as though still hanging from an invisible noose. One chilling story tells of a couple walking hand in hand through the garden late at night. As they approached a cluster of trees, they noticed what looked like a group of men standing together. At first, they thought it was a gathering of reenactors or costumed performers. But as they drew closer, the figures dissolved into mist, leaving behind only the faint smell of the sea. The couple left the park immediately, too shaken to return. There are also tales of people experiencing sudden cold spots, even on warm summer evenings. These chills often hit without warning, like stepping through an invisible wall of icy air. Many paranormal investigators believe these temperature drops mark the presence of spirits, perhaps the restless pirates wandering the grounds. Beyond the ghostly sailors, there are darker reports. Some claim to hear voices carried on the wind, low, guttural cries, or the sound of men groaning in pain. A few even swear they've heard faint screams echoing across the park after midnight. Though when they investigate, the space is empty. Others have described feeling an overwhelming sense of dread, as if someone were silently urging them to leave. White Point Garden also has a reputation for creating strange disorientation. Tourists sometimes claim to lose their bearings, wandering in circles, even though the park itself is not large or confusing. Some chalk this up to the heavy atmosphere and suggestible minds, but those who experienced it say it feels like more than that, like something unseen is toying with them, keeping them trapped in the haunted history of the place. Despite its eerie reputation, White Point Garden continues to draw visitors, many of whom seek out the paranormal stories tied to its grounds. Ghost tours frequently stop at the park, their guides recounting the grisly executions and the spirits that supposedly linger. The combination of Charleston's charm and the garden's macabre past makes it a powerful attraction for those interested in the supernatural. Still, for all the fascination it inspires, the garden remains unsettling after dark. The weight of its history is palpable, and countless witnesses over the years insist that the spirits of the pirates have not moved on. Perhaps it's their anger at the cruel deaths they suffered, or perhaps it's their determination to remain tied to the place where their lives ended. Whatever the reason, their presence lingers in the shadows, waiting for anyone brave enough to walk the garden paths at night. White Point Garden is a reminder that beauty and horror often coexist. Beneath the canopy of trees and beside the scenic waterfront, the restless dead continue to roam. For those who venture there in the late hours, it is not just a park, it's a place where history still breathes, and where the ghosts of the past refuse to be forgotten. The Advil Opera House in Advil, South Carolina, is more than just a historic theater. It is a place where the past and the paranormal intertwine. Built in 1908, the Opera House was designed to be a cultural hub, showcasing plays, musical performances, and community events. Over the decades, it has hosted countless actors, performers, and audience members, each leaving their mark on the building. Yet, amid the grandeur and history, the Opera House has earned a reputation that goes beyond ordinary hauntings. Actors, staff, and visitors alike have reported experiences that suggest something unseen still lingers within its walls. Performers are often the first to notice the strange occurrences. Actors on stage frequently describe feeling watched, as if someone unseen is observing their every move. Lights flicker without explanation, sometimes plunging the stage into sudden darkness during critical moments. Costumes hung backstage have been found out of place or moved entirely, and props occasionally shift as if handled by invisible hands. These incidents are not isolated. Over the years, multiple actors have reported similar events, creating an uneasy understanding that the theater may be shared with spirits of the past. The balconies of the Advil Opera House are particularly notorious. Audience members have occasionally spotted shadowy figures sitting in the upper tiers, their outlines dark and undefined. These figures often vanish the moment they are directly observed, leaving empty seats behind. One of the most chilling stories involves a man who stayed late after a rehearsal, sitting alone in the audience. He saw a full-bodied figure in the center of the balcony, dressed in period clothing, and watching him intently. As he stared, the figure simply faded into thin air, leaving the man shaken and questioning whether he had seen a ghost or been caught in a moment of imagination. Staff members also recount experiences that defy explanation. Footsteps echo through empty hallways. Whispers drift across the theater when no one else is present, and doors open or close on their own. Some claim to feel sudden drops in temperature, icy drafts that seem to follow them from room to room. These phenomena contribute to the sense that the building itself is alive, a vessel where past performers and patrons have imprinted their energy. Paranormal investigators who have explored the Opera House often record unexplained sounds and EMF spikes, further fueling speculation about the presence of spirits. Despite these unsettling experiences, the Advil Opera House continues to operate as a theater, blending its historic charm with the mysteries that inhabit it. Some performers say that the spirits are not malevolent, merely lingering, watching, or perhaps reenacting moments from their own past performances. The notion of ghostly spectators or fellow performers adds a unique, if eerie, energy to the space. Actors learn to accept the unusual occurrences as part of the theater's character, sometimes joking that the ghosts are just keeping an eye on the quality of the performances. Visitors to the theater particularly during evening shows or late rehearsals, often feel a sense of unease. Shadows seem to shift unnaturally, and sounds can carry differently in the historic building, making ordinary creaks and groans of the wood floors feel like something more. Those who are sensitive to paranormal activity report sudden chills, feelings of being watched, and even fleeting glimpses of figures in old-fashioned clothing. These experiences reinforce the Opera House's reputation as a haunted location, attracting both thrill-seekers and those curious about the supernatural. The legend of the Advil Opera House is sustained not only by the personal accounts of actors and staff, but also by its history. Over a century of performances, audiences, and behind-the-scenes activity has left a layered energy within the building. Many believe that the spirits are tied to the theater through love of performance or unfinished business, unable or unwilling to leave the place where they once celebrated art and culture. Whether one believes in ghosts or not, the stories surrounding the Advil Opera House create an undeniable atmosphere. Every flickering light, misplaced costume, or shadowy figure adds to the sense that the theater is more than bricks and mortar. It is a living history, shared by both the living and the dead. The Opera House stands as a testament to the cultural past of Advil, and for those who have experienced its paranormal side, it is also a place where the supernatural continues to perform, silently and invisibly, alongside the actors of today. The story of Pawleys Island's Gray Man is one of South Carolina's most enduring and chilling legends. A tale woven from tragedy, love, and the relentless power of the sea. Pawleys Island itself is a stretch of pristine coast, marked by sand dunes, marsh grasses, and the ceaseless rhythm of the Atlantic tide. But beyond its beauty, the island holds a spectral guardian, enigmatic figure known only as the Gray Man. His appearance is not random. It is a warning, locals and visitors alike tell of encountering him in the quiet hours before great storms. His misty outline walking along the desolate beach as if tethered to the fate of the island and those who call it home. The earliest accounts of the Gray Man date back to the early 1800s, and the story begins, as many ghost tales do, with love and tragedy. According to legend, a young man, deeply in love and eager to reunite with his rode on horseback toward Pawleys Island after being away for some time. His excitement, however, blinded him to the dangers of the marshland terrain. Somewhere along the ride, horse and rider were swallowed by quicksand-like mud in the treacherous salt marsh. By the time help arrived, it was too late. The young man drowned, his body never recovered. Stricken with grief, wandered the shoreline in despair. It is said that one evening, as she stood staring out at the horizon, she saw a familiar figure in the distance, a shadowy outline of her lost love, clad in gray. He did not speak, but his presence was undeniable. She ran toward him, but before she could reach out, he faded into the mist. Days later, a violent hurricane struck Pawleys Island, but curiously, her family's home was spared while destruction surrounded it. The belief was born. The Gray Man had returned from beyond to protect those he loved, and in doing so, became a spectral sentinel for generations to come. Over the centuries, the Gray Man has appeared again and again, his presence always tied to hurricanes and coastal storms. Countless residents have reported eerily similar experiences, walking the beach and spotting a lone figure, cloaked in gray, moving silently through the sand. When approached, he vanishes into thin air, leaving only the crashing surf and the distant call of seabirds behind. Those who heed the unspoken warning often find themselves mysteriously spared from the worst of the storm's wrath, their homes intact even when neighbors' houses are torn apart. In one of the most famous accounts, dating back to 1893, a couple claimed to have seen the Gray Man just before the devastating Sea Islands hurricane struck. They evacuated quickly, and when they returned, they found their home untouched, while nearly every structure around it was destroyed. More modern sightings continue to echo the same theme. In 1954, just before Hurricane Hazel battered the coast, multiple witnesses described a shadowy man pacing the shoreline at dusk. Decades later, in 1989, the Gray Man was reportedly seen by several locals before Hurricane Hugo one of the most catastrophic storms in South Carolina history. In each case, those who encountered him swore their properties were miraculously spared. Descriptions of the gray man are strikingly consistent. He is not grotesque or terrifying in appearance, but rather melancholy. A mist-like figure draped in gray clothing that seems to blend seamlessly with the storm clouds above. Some say his face is obscured, blurred as though by fog. Others insist they feel a sudden rush of sadness or foreboding when they see him, as though his grief is eternally tethered to his apparition. He does not speak, but his presence carries a weight, a silent plea to flee the island before it is too late. Skeptics dismiss the legend as folklore born from coincidence, a comforting tale that helps islanders rationalize the randomness of storm destruction. They argue that hurricanes can spare some homes while demolishing others due to natural factors like elevation or wind direction. But believers are quick to point out the consistency of the stories, the strange feeling of being watched, the inexplicable chills, and the eerie precision of the gray man's warnings. For those who have looked into the mist and seen him, no scientific explanation can undo the haunting reality of their experience. The gray man has become a symbol of Pawleys Island, etched into its identity as much as the dunes and the tide. While many ghost stories are born from malice or unfinished business, his is a tale of love and protection. Unlike the vengeful spirits of old battlegrounds or haunted houses, the gray man is a guardian, a tragic soul who uses his eternal presence to spare others from suffering the same fate he endured. His story continues to resonate because it captures both the fragility of human life and the enduring strength of love that refuses to die. Even in the face of nature's fury, visitors today still walk the beaches of Pawleys Island with a mixture of awe and unease, wondering if the shadow they glimpse at dusk is just a trick of the light or something more. During hurricane season, stories circulate quickly. Someone spotted him near the dunes. Someone else saw him standing motionless at the water's edge. Each sighting stirs both fear and hope, for while his appearance is a harbinger of destruction, it is also a warning that saves lives. The legend of the gray man is more than just a ghost story. It's a reminder of the mysteries that linger between the living and the dead, of love that endures beyond the grave, and of the strange guardianship that seems to protect this small slice of South Carolina's coast. Whether one believes or not, the tale persists, carried on the salty winds that sweep across Pawleys Island. And perhaps, the next time a storm brews on the horizon, a lone figure in gray will once again appear on the sands, walking silently into the mist, reminding all who see him that the past is never truly gone. Hell's Gate Cemetery in Gaffney, South Carolina, is widely regarded as one of the most terrifying places in the state. Locals whisper about its dark history, warning outsiders to steer clear after dusk. The cemetery is nestled among dense woods and dotted with crumbling tombstones, some leaning at dangerous angles as if the earth itself is trying to reject them. Over time, legends have grown around Hell's Gate, stories of strange lights, phantom sounds, and unexplained marks that suggest something far more sinister than a simple graveyard resides here. The most persistent tale is that Hell's Gate is more than a cemetery. It is a portal to the underworld. Those who have ventured into its shadowy paths claim to see glowing red eyes peering from the trees. These eyes often follow visitors as they walk through the narrow, leaf-covered trails, disappearing when approached, only to reappear somewhere else, making it nearly impossible to shake the sensation of being watched. The locals say that these eyes belong to spirits or entities that guard the gateway, warning the living to stay away. Many visitors report hearing phantom screams echoing through the forest at night. Unlike the quiet groans or whispers common to haunted locations, the screams at Hell's Gate are chillingly human, raw, and filled with anguish. They often come from all directions at once, creating the unsettling feeling that the forest itself is alive, closing in on anyone who dares to wander too far. These screams have been heard by both curious thrill-seekers and casual explorers, often leaving them shaken to the point of fleeing before even reaching the oldest sections of the cemetery. Some of the most disturbing accounts involve unexplained physical contact. Visitors often leave with scratches on their arms, legs, or backs, even though no one else is present. These scratches are deep enough to leave welts, but disappear within days without a trace of infection. Others describe the sensation of icy hands brushing against their shoulders or being gently but firmly pushed from behind, urging them to leave. These experiences reinforce the legend that Hell's Gate is a place where the veil between the living and the dead is thin, and the entities that dwell there are not content to remain invisible. The cemetery itself seems to play tricks on perception. Paths appear longer or shorter than they should, and familiar sections seem to shift when no one is paying attention. Trees groan and sway, even when the wind is calm, and shadows stretch unnaturally across the gravestones. Some visitors report hearing faint chanting or whispers in languages they cannot understand, as if the dead are performing rituals to protect the portal. Even during daylight, the cemetery can feel oppressive, heavy with an energy that is difficult to describe but impossible to ignore. Electronic devices often behave strangely at Hell's Gate, adding to its mystique. Cameras malfunction, phones lose signal, and flashlights flicker inexplicably. Paranormal investigators who have visited the site report EMF spikes, temperature drops, and other phenomena that suggest a powerful, unseen presence. Some have captured images of faint red orbs hovering over gravestones, reinforcing the legend of the glowing eyes that haunt the woods. Despite its fearsome reputation, Hell's Gate continues to draw visitors, some in search of thrills, others hoping to capture proof of the paranormal. Many leave with stories that defy rational explanation, whether it's seeing a figure vanish into mist, feeling invisible hands on their skin, or hearing screaming echoes that seem impossibly close yet remain unseen. Locals maintain that those who respect the cemetery's warnings and do not linger after dark usually escape unharmed, while those who disregard the tales may encounter the restless forces that inhabit the land. Hell's Gate Cemetery is more than a burial ground. It is a place where fear and legend intertwine, where the past refuses to remain buried, and where the living can sense the presence of something beyond comprehension. Whether or not the portal to the underworld is real, the experiences reported here are vivid and terrifying, making Hell's Gate one of South Carolina's most haunted and unsettling locations. It is a site where every shadow, every chill, and every unexplained sound serves as a reminder that some doors should remain closed and some places are best left alone. And so, dear listeners, our haunted journey through South Carolina comes to an end, or perhaps it's only just beginning. For in a land so steeped in history, tragedy, and mystery, it's hard to know where the living world stops and the spirit world begins. From the pirate-haunted gardens of Charleston to the storm fort-telling gray man of Pawleys Island, South Carolina's ghost stories are as enduring as the Spanish moss hanging from its trees. Every creak of the floorboards, every shadow that lingers a second too long, could be a reminder that the past is never truly gone. Maybe, one day, you'll find yourself in one of these places, walking the dim halls of the old jail, dining at Poogan's porch, or standing at the edge of Hell's Gate. And if you do, listen closely, watch the corners, because sometimes the spirits are closer than you think. Thank you for joining me tonight. If you enjoyed this journey through South Carolina's haunted history, be sure to return for more chilling tales. Until then, keep your lights low, your curiosity high, and remember, ghosts have a way of following those who believe in them. Sweet dreams, if you can sleep at all.